Becoming a ghost in Middle-Earth was pretty tricky. Not that it couldn't be done, but it took a very unique set of circumstances to pull it off. For elves, this was easier done than others, and for men, it was actually almost impossible. Today, we're going to take a look at how the different races were able to avoid going to the halls of the dead, and how they became ghosts in Middle-Earth. First, we'll start with the elves. As most of you know, elves are immortal. That means if they're not killed in an unnatural way, they will live until the end of time, or at least the end of the world. But there are times when they do die. First, if their physical bodies are destroyed, this usually happens through violence or accidents, whether through a sword fight on top of a glacier or by an accidental fall from a horse. Elves' bodies would eventually perish, and at that point, their spirits would separate from their bodies. Now, whenever an elf spirit was liberated, they would first sense the summoning of Mondos, which is both the name of the home for all dead souls in Middle-Earth and also the name for the god who rules it. Most elves would become lured by the calling and travel across Middle-Earth to the undying lands of the gods, on the continent of Aman, and specifically in the kingdom of Valinor. There they would wait in the dark caverns of Mondos, recollecting on their life in the physical world, and after some time, if they were lucky, receive a new body so they could roam their new home on Valinor. But what happened to the ones that didn't answer the summoning? The ones who stayed behind without their body? Now, Tolkien calls these elves unhoused. In later writings, Tolkien suggested that only bad elves would decide to stay behind in Middle-Earth after their physical bodies had been destroyed in an unnatural way. And it was usually the souls of these unhoused elves that would be used by the enemies, Melkor and Sauron, for their necromancy. These unhoused elves probably weren't innately evil, but you could say that because simply by refusing the call of Mondos, they were kind of rejecting the natural order of the world, so men were advised to never try to commune with them. The spirits of elves who haunted Middle-Earth would seem fair and kind, but many of them were secretly hoping to find a chink in a mortal psyche and even at times invade their body. For some reason, they refused the summoning of Mondos and the possibility of properly receiving a new body in the land of Valinor, but they still try to possess the bodies of men kinda often. Now, besides these types of ghosts, the ones who died of unnatural causes like murder or accidents, again, these are the kinds that try to possess people on Middle-Earth, there was another type of elf that could become ghosts. Simply put, if elves stayed in Middle-Earth for too long, their bodies would fade away. Now, these elves were not called the Unhoused, they were instead called Lingerers. Unlike the houseless elves, the Lingerers were not usually that evil. They still actually possessed bodies, so to speak, but they were so far faded by years and years of use that they were immaterial. The spirit of the elves had basically burnt through their bodies by that point in time. These lingering elves stayed in Middle-Earth because they found it too beautiful to leave, and instead of haunting the world in an evil way, they minded their own business and stayed to the places that they loved in life. Rarely, if ever, did they try to communicate with the living, and since they technically had bodies, they really never tried to possess anyone. Now, at this point, we know that the elves definitely became ghosts in Middle-Earth, that they did this either by simply refusing the call of Mondos after they died, or because their bodies had faded away through the years. Now, but what about men? Well, for men to become ghosts is a little bit tricky. Unlike elves, men shouldn't have a choice when it comes to the afterlife. When they die, their soul should immediately depart for the halls of Mondos, and then from there, go to a final resting place that only the creator of the universe, Illuvatar, knows about. But there were some ghosts of men in Middle-Earth, despite these strong supernatural laws. However, unlike the elves, they couldn't simply decide to stay and haunt places that they liked in their life. Their souls were either condemned or enslaved to the Dark Lords. Most famously, the dead men of Dunharrow were cursed and couldn't leave Middle-Earth after their death. These were the phantom soldiers who would eventually help Aragorn during the final days of the War of the Ring. What's interesting about these ghosts is that, one, they're men, and two, they were cursed by a simple mortal. Isildur is the one who condemned them, and in order for him to do that, a supernatural force must have agreed. Whether that was Mondos, the god of the dead, or even Eru Ilúvatar, the creator of the universe, is unknown, but Isildur certainly wasn't powerful enough to control the fates of mortal men in his own way. Now, the Nazgul also fit pretty much in line with our concept of ghosts. Their bodies had been worn away by the power of the Nine Rings, and only their spirits, draped in black cloth, remained. At times they were described as having undead flesh, but at others they were described as invisible dead spirits. In either case, like our real-world understanding of ghosts, the Nazgul were spirits who could interact with the real world and also in the spirit one. Now, the lights in the Dead Marshes, which Frodo and Sam saw while traveling to Mordor, are also some type of ghosts that remain unexplained. Perhaps they were the spirits of Númenórean or Elvish soldiers who had refused the summons of Mondos, or perhaps were otherwise blocked. That seems a little bit unlikely, since Tolkien repeatedly says that pure spirits can't interact with the physical world, and also any elf spirit left in Middle-Earth would in time fall to the call of the Dark Lord. Bearwights are the last supernatural creatures that would fit on this list of ghosts. Their origins are a little bit tricky to decipher though. On one hand, they seem most likely to be under the control of the Witch King, which by extension means easily they could have been the creation of Sauron's necromancy. Some have often thought that they were the result of experimentation on the unhoused souls of elves who decided not to heed the summoning of Mondos. Whatever the case may be, they were some of the most evil creatures in Middle-Earth and nearly ended Frodo's journey to Mount Doom. If it weren't for the arrival of Tom Bombadil, who defeated them easily, Frodo would have definitely died there early on. As you see, for a simple man, becoming a ghost in Middle-Earth was pretty tough. The elves could haunt the world whenever they wished by comparison, but humans needed to be subjected to curses and hellish servitude if they ever wanted to become ghosts. Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed our video today. If you want to see anything else about Lord of the Rings or Middle-Earth mythology, let me know, and I'll catch you next time.